Okay, well, here we go. Back with this. Virginia news shooter, Obama's first domestic drone strike. Here's where they're trying to say that the area, InfoWars is saying that the area of Time Warner residents are without internet service right now. I don't have Time Warner. I have a different off-brand, but hey, it is what it is. If you live up underneath this red area in these blotchy places, try to let one of us alternative media people know about it, if you can, so we can cover it for you. But back to this main story here. Let's see what they got to say next.
You can find more reports on Infowars.com.
And as a result of that nationwide Time Warner cable outage, some of the websites we're not able to even pull up here in the studio. We're having our own little issues here, so we may be doing a little bit more overhead camera than normal. Let's get right into the news. Of course, we're going to start off with the tragedy that happened yesterday in Virginia with that guy who went off the rails and basically went postal on some former co-workers. Here we are from the Daily Mail.
Went postal.
Exclusive. He was a human tape recorder. How TV murderer was criticized by bosses for appalling journalistic standards and reprimanded for wearing an Obama badge to report on elections. Warped TV reporter Vester Lee Flanagan exasperated bosses with his stiff and nervous delivery, his inability to use a teleprompter, and by wearing a president.
He did look stiff. He was on my news channel. WDBJ7 was my news channel for many years.
BJ dubbed the failed newsman the human tape recorder because he frequently parroted what interviews had told him rather than doing his own journalism. Flanagan, 41, clashed repeatedly with photojournalists, belittling them in public and intimidating them with his violent temper, according to internal reports. He was also censored for wearing an Obama sticker while recording a segment at a polling booth during a 2012 U.S. presidential election, a clear breach of journalistic impartiality. I would totally agree, and actually, if you go a couple more pages in the article, and here we can look at that November 9th, 2012, I guess, disciplinary report to Bryce Williams, which was his pseudonym he went by, from Dan Dennison. It has come to our attention that while standing in line Tuesday preparing to vote, you were wearing a President Obama sticker on your clothing. Bryce, this is a clear violation not only of shirts company policy, but of standard journalistic ethics. Journalists, and particularly reporters who appear on television, must abide by a different standard. Please refer to Section 5-12 of the Shirts Employee Handbook. New employees must refrain from participating in active partisan politics. I guess nobody told that to George Stephanopoulos because he was...
I got this on my 50-inch TV. If y'all could zoom in even better than what I can, and find out what that says other than what that dude's reading. Let me know.
Saying, hey, this guy's impartial. Journalists should be held impartial, especially when they're supposedly from this mainstream media and they're supposed to be impartial, even though we see them goading for certain candidates all the time. We wear our emotions here on our sleeve and who we root for. Definitely not for Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, or any of those ilk. And a lot of the Republicans aren't looking too good either. I just had to tweet somebody.
Okay, well, they just now said that there was a right-wing news media outlet.
As their main signpost, and that's what we have to keep in mind. Speaking of people who not keep freedom as their signpost, here we have Obama. Here was his reaction to the shooting yesterday.
It breaks my heart every time you read about or hear about.
Sure it does. You plan them, dude. It's all your job. You and that damn, what's his name?
Gun-related.
Trying to take the guns away from the people.
Dwarfs. Any deaths that
And I voted for you both times.
That's right, Obama. Blame the gun. Don't blame Fast and Furious, which was responsible for the
exactly.
Several people in Mexico and the United States that we know of. Don't blame ISIS, the group that you're funding.
Yep.
No, blame the inanimate objects
that are Israelis.
A little more sense. Donald Trump actually had reason and logic behind what he said, not just behind this emotion that all guns are bad, except the president has his armed bodyguards. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you're not the president.
That's right.
Here's what Donald Trump had to say when he was...
I'm not a right-winger.
This isn't a gun problem, this is a mental problem. And frankly...
yeah, exactly, Donald.
Like this, he snuck up on him.
It's not a gun problem, it's a mental problem.
Whatever it would have been something. But, you're not going to get rid of all guns, so I know one thing. If you tried to do it, the bad guys would have them.
He's the only one out there speaking truth right now. That's in the mainstream.
It would be a hopeless situation for them.
He said more also, you can look at the article by Kurt Nemo Trump, "The problem is not guns, it's mental illness." Here he also says, "In the old days, they had mental institutions for people like this because he was really definitely borderline and definitely would have and should have been institutionalized. At some point, somebody should have seen that. I mean, people close to him should have seen it." But what else is going on here? There's also a new offensive against the Second Amendment because the victims of the people who died are now going to come out. They are goaded, they are trained to come out and say, "Hey, now we have to come after guns." And the father of the slain reporter,
I believe that wholly.
"The government has to do something about guns." And at least he mentioned mental illness. "I'm not going to let this issue drop," Andy Parker told Maggie Kelly of Fox News. "We've got to do something about crazy people getting guns." And how do they propose?
Rat Trap has a gun, but I was told I was crazy for telling everybody about 9/11 before it happened.
The government says it's going to have a problem. If you don't believe in vaccinations, you're going to have a problem. If you were a veteran coming back and have PTSD, you're going to have a problem getting a gun.
I didn't know it was going to be called 9/11 at the time. I just said I see two buildings that look like they're the same building falling apart.
That is that is their philosophy, and that is what they're going for. That is their strategy, to go after the guns in that way. Now, if you look at the article from Steve Watson, "Race War. Shooter passed government background check, used legal firearm. Majority of mass shooters in recent memory passed background checks." BuzzFeed reports that it has spoken to Thomas Faison, a spokesman for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
Let's see if we can get any closer on that.
Flanagan's Glock 19 pistol was bought weeks ago, and that Flanagan had successfully passed all the required background checks. Faison also noted that Flanagan had purchased a second gun. The finding again makes void the argument made by those calling for universal background checks. One such person was Democratic Governor Terry McAuliffe, who within 3 hours of the killings was calling for new gun legislation to assure checks for all gun purchases. The same argument was made in the Dylan Roof case in June until it emerged that the weapon Roof used was legally acquired. In fact, if you look at all the shooters, we had the Virginia Tech shooter, the Aurora, Colorado shooter, Fort Hood, Isla Vista, the Washington Navy Yard, even Arapahoe High School.
How many of them were faked and staged just to get guns taken away from us citizens?
Maybe it's not background checks. Maybe it's something like the types of medication these people are on. Maybe it's other types of things that we haven't. Maybe it's the fact that other people aren't armed.
Maybe they're Illuminati trained.
Not the Navy Yard shooter, but the ones at the recruiting center that Donald Trump mentioned.
Are brainwashed.
Could have fought back. They are trained to know how to use firearms to defend themselves. But yet, they aren't allowed to be armed. That's a President Obama decision that he has kept going from others. I think Bill Clinton first put that in place at the recruiting centers. And that's something that the Pentagon is standing by. They're saying, we got to keep these guys unarmed. It just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. An armed population is a polite population, as we saw in Ferguson when we had the Oath Keepers walking around with Joe Biggs and Jakari Jackson.
And Dabu.
Nothing happened that night.
Dabu was there.
Isn't that amazing? Moving on, this is from Kit Daniels. White House pushes race war, then blames guns for Flanagan's race war. There it is. The Obama administration is blaming guns for the WBDJ TV shooting, even though the shooter, Vester Hannigan, was influenced by the White House's race baiting. And this article goes into how back, since Trayvon Martin, this has started with the president and the attorney general weighing in personally on their own issues. They're the ones who come in and say, hey, look, Trayvon looked like my son. Then the attorney general jumps in, and they always weigh in on these issues when it's politically convenient for them to try to demonize gun ownership in general, because that is what their main mission is to go after guns.
Well, of course.
And I hope we've proved it going through some of these articles here. Now, today on the show, Joe Biggs...
Of course they want our guns.
Joe Biggs was interviewed by Alex Jones, and we actually put this into an article. Unlike Confederate flag, liberals won't ban gay flag linked to WDBJ shooting. Rainbow flag is found in the shooter's
There you go again.
And here is Joe Biggs with more on that.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com.
Yep.
Now I'm standing right
Seen
across
this
the street
dude.
from the Bridgewater Plaza. Now over to my left, over here we'll pan across. This is the actual location where Flanagan came in and shot the two journalists. We still have another person critically injured in the hospital. Now today at 5 o'clock...
They couldn't get any closer than I could.
We're going to have a press conference right over here across the street. They're going to actually bring us over and let us walk around, talk, ask questions. And I've got a few questions I'm going to ask too as well, so we're prepared for that. But one of the things that we know today is they found the LGBT flag in Flanagan's apartment. So what this means is since he has the flag, that means he represents
And it's
all
close to the
gay,
lake
lesbian
again.
people. So I think he speaks
They're
for
trying
them
to show
all.
it
If any
way
flag
the
out,
hell
I
out
think we should
there,
call for a full-out
and it ain't.
ban
It's on
of
the lake.
that flag, just like they did in Charleston, Alex.
I agree, because the Confederate battle flag, Robert E. Lee flag, was there. Historically, it has nothing to do with oppressing black people, even though they say it does. Let's ban the rainbow flag now, and let's ban the Confederate flag. And then if somebody,
I don't have any problem with anybody unless they got a problem with me. If you gay, it don't matter. If you black, it don't matter. Unless you got a problem with me.
And you can read about the hypocrisy in
I ain't got a problem with you.
Liberals won't ban gay flag linked to WDBJ.
I try to love everybody.
And I want to go to a quick report by David Knight talking about this shooting being Obama's first domestic drone strike.
David Knight for Infowars.com here with Joe Biggs. We're in front
There
of
he is.
Bridgewater
There's that
Plaza.
old guy.
This is a new area, beautiful area here as you pull up. Wonderful lake, mountains that they just opened up some new hotel facilities here. That's what they're reporting on.
Here's the cooler
Just
old
kind of
dude.
a fluff report. Of course, this is the shooting, but behind me you see what the guy was really after. He really wanted the press coverage. It was only a couple of weeks ago that he created his Twitter account. He had an entire media campaign about himself that he had planned. The guy was a total
I seen him grab that
a total racist.
microphone out of the back of the car and said, "They want the news, I'm going to give them the news."
Talking points, the way they have used the shooting, especially the one in Charleston.
I was talking to them at the time.
He bought into that totally. Of course, he's been buying into this for a very long time. Every time he failed with anything, he used it as an excuse. The fact that it was because of racism or the fact that he was gay. He has a long history, at least one other station where he couldn't get along with anybody at work. He had a chip on his shoulder. He was constantly violent and confrontational with people. He was written up for incompetence, but of course, it was all about racism. Now, he says in his manifesto, and I think it's interesting that ABC's not released the entire manifesto yet. They've only given us a couple of quotes that you can see these couple of paragraphs repeated by everybody in the media, but there's 23 pages there. And what came out of the lawsuit, the depositions that were there, the reasons why they fired him, what we learned from that was that the guy was an adamant Obama supporter, even to the extent that in the last election cycle, he was covering the election with an Obama sticker on his coat. He was written up for that. He said, "We're not allowed to do that. We want to try to appear, at least, to be objective." Of course, nobody is objective. That's one of the fallacies of journalism, is to deny the fact that you have a point of view.
Did you hear that?
Rather than they be honest about it. I'd like to see the ABC anchors and George Stephanopoulos with their Hillary Clinton stickers on, so we know.
I wouldn't, because she wants us to have adult fun camps, and I don't want to go to an adult fun camp, aka FEMA camp.
He was written up for that partisanship. He was so heavily into the Obama narrative that once it stepped up, as we saw after the Charleston shooting, that, he said, incentivized him. He said that happened on the 17th of June. On the 19th of June, he ordered his gun. Now, that's important because Terry McAuliffe, who himself is nothing but a Democrat Party operative, this is somebody who, just like Treasury Secretary Lew, has absolutely no clue about what he's doing. He's merely a Democrat operative. Terry McAuliffe, who was a Democrat National Committee chairman, and he was high up in the campaigns of the two Clintons. Bill Clinton, he was a assistant campaign manager. He was the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton. That's his sole qualification for being governor. But I guess it's a good qualification because
he probably keeps looking to his left to see what I'm doing.
So
Because I'm over there on his left side recording.
More gun control. In spite of the fact that Buster Flanagan ordered his gun,
Rat Chap ain't gonna bother nobody though.
Have a background check on
Unless
him.
they bother me
We
first.
have Governor McAuliffe saying that this shows that we need to have universal background checks. And what he means by that is background checks even for private sales, for gun sales. They want to control everything. That's just the next incremental step. That and the race war that we see, this is the fruition of the race war that everybody is putting into. He bought into it totally, and he became an Obama-killing drone. That's precisely what happened with this. We're going to have more reports. I'm here with Joe Biggs. We're going to be on the radio show today live with Alex Jones with an update. Stay with us, Infowars.com. I'm David Knight.
Well, there you go. The drone strikes have begun. Now, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to have Joe Biggs live on the scene in Virginia where the shooting took place yesterday. And we're also going to look at some new vaccination news that's coming. That's right. They want to push the universal flu shot. All that and more on the Infowars Nightly News.
They ain't pushing a flu shot on me. I've been posting that several times. I ain't taking no flu shot.
You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused. less brain fog, more energy, more special.
And tell Dabu every other day when he puts something other out there about forced medicines and crap like that. I ain't taking the flu shot.
For example, the L-theanine inside of it.
Anyway, looks like it's going to be about all on that story for today. Y'all have a good one. Peace.
This is what you're actually